All right, good afternoon. We call the special meeting of the Traffic Authority to order. Roll call. John Burke's here. I'm here. We want to waive the reading of the minutes for the April meeting.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Public communications.
We actually,
A vote.
yeah, aye.
Two. I as well. First item is under public communications, West Mystic Avenue speeding concerns. And I'm just going to depart for this. I welcome. I know we have a couple people here and as well as someone online. Just for the sake of the agenda here, which item are these folks here for?
West Mystic Avenue.
You are, okay, perfect. So timing is perfect. We don't have to jump around on the agenda. So you had some concerns and we've got a report here about what our officer did from the traffic unit to go out there and take a look at it, but I certainly introduce yourselves and you're welcome to speak at this point.
Sure. Mind if I go ahead?
Oh, please.
My name is Laura Holmes. I live at 29 West Mystic Avenue. I'm assuming you're the chief.
Yes, I'm Chief LJ
John
Pizarro,
Burke,
John
town
Burke.
manager.
Nice to meet you. Oh, and this is one of our neighbors. Yeah. So I've lived on West Mystic Avenue for nearly 10 years and lived in this area for 30 years. Over time, I've seen changes that go along with more people realizing what a nice place Mystic is. And although neighbors on the streets have noted that the traffic concerns are not a new issue, see, for example, the stop sign that was installed at West Mystic Avenue and Roland Street, which was done quite a few years ago. There is an agreement among neighbors that I've spoken to, which is the majority of neighbors, that the situation has gotten dramatically worse. This spring, I was able to connect with most of the households on the street, and without exception, the neighbors concurred that failure to obey posted speed limits, stop signs, and distracted driving and recklessness are rampant among drivers on West Mystic Avenue. I would say at this point too, that if you were to repeat the traffic study now versus the April study, that you would see an even different situation than you did then. The issues are somewhat different depending on where you live on the street. On the north end of the street, there are concerns with people laying the red light. They're trying to beat the red light at the intersection with Route 1. This is a picture of a crash that happened recently, which is a car over a tree. Not exactly sure what happened.
Is there water on the road? Is it raining?
Maybe. But clearly they were traveling at too high rate of speed to make the turn, didn't make the turn, ran over the tree of the people who live at 2 West Mystic.
That's a town tree. From people.
Yeah.
Streets are important.
So, also many crashes into parked vehicles in that end of the street due to distracted driving. And there's more congestion up there with parked cars and other kinds of things. In the middle of the street where Ann lives, it's not uncommon for people to fail to stop at the stop sign at Roland.
I have started calling it a 4-way field.
Yeah.
It's running straight through it or the rolling stops are constant.
Yeah. And that's where the acceleration going, especially southbound, starts. And at the south end of the street, which is near where I live, the acceleration is quite dramatic, even going uphill, surprisingly, as was found in the traffic study. And we park a car out front often because we have a teenager, that comes and goes a lot. Very often we see cars narrowly missing the parked car, us as pedestrians, or us and our pets. So some of the neighbors have made suggestions. What can we do? We've seen what other communities have done to enact traffic calming measures. Some people want speed bumps, some people don't. Some people talk about additional stop signs on the street, which may be the most viable option. And suggested raised tables at the intersection with stop signs to combine sort of like a slowing and the stopping feature. And others have mentioned in places like Montauk Avenue in London or Watch Hill in Rhode Island, where there are speed monitor signs that tell cars how fast they're going. I understand that increased patrolling and enforcement would be difficult given the geography of the town and the wide area that the police need to cover. I don't see that as a viable solution. Officer Lucero was there for a day, which was fantastic, but that was pretty much one day in the last, I haven't really seen a lot of presence since that time, and I get it, I understand why. But we respectfully request some kind of traffic calming measure on our street to be installed as soon as possible. If we can hopefully catch some of this very busy summer season, we would greatly appreciate it. That was what I wanted to say, but I don't know if my neighbors have anything more.
No, it's just a history of if you're parked on that street, you're gonna get hit. I don't know the gentleman's name, but he has a truck and he's at probably like number 4 or something.
Greg Stoltz.
Right. I guess his truck's been hit 4 times. And the person on-
What's his name, Greg?
Greg Stoltz.
How old is he?
I think he's older.
All right, just like my age, your name sounds familiar, like.
Yeah, I think he's on one of the commissions involved. Maybe. I don't know, Harvey?
I'm sorry, just I digress. Just a curiosity question. That name
And
rang a
then,
bell.
at the corner of Tori, she's had her mirror ripped off. The car's got holes. Then you go back to the next house, they've gotten hit. There was a car coming south and it actually hit their car on the north side of the street. The person crossed the road and hit, she was distracted about something. And then in front, and then the Idegers, they've had their cars hit. And then the next house, the Dukins, they've had their cars hit. And then in front of Craig Edwards, they've had a car. And a lot of it doesn't get reported because it's somebody visiting and they park. And I think that, the car gets hit and it's a hit and run too, they take off. And I've been involved in that. I remember an officer asking, well, why did you call when it happened? And it's like, so I saw the car hit and take off, but I didn't really see any at the script. What the officer said, and you could just read it, check. And obviously.
Excuse me, just a second. For those of you who are online, I'd ask that you could please mute your phones. We're getting a lot of feedback here in the meeting. So if you can, just try and mute your phones or your computers, and we'd appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sorry.
It's just about that. It doesn't happen every day, but it happens every year.
Okay. Okay. I do have some data from the last really year and a half. You have a few accidents on here from April and March of this year, another one in October and June of last year. And that this only captures the last year and a half because we're on a new records management system.
Yeah,
So
this happened like 7 years ago. I had the dates, I remember that something.
I believe
I
it.
have some of those going back to 2014.
No, well, this supports, it doesn't tell me a lot about the type of accident and the causative factors, but it tells us that there is some that have happened even during the last year and a half.
The other one guy was just on his way to Walmart and just drove in the back of the truck. It's like. And it's just
What's the speed limit through there?
25.
25.
Yeah. What's the lowest you can go? The state allows
25.
I'll tell you, I always go 25 and I am tailgated almost every time I go.
You probably acknowledge this, and it goes without saying, but most people don't drive the speed limit regardless of what it is. In fact, as a police officer, the first question you get, how fast can you really go? Right? How fast can you really go? That's not necessarily acceptable.
10, right?
Yeah, well,
I have to say that I called State Farm this morning, who insures my car, and because I noticed that there is an enforcement tolerance of either 5 or 7 miles per hour was used in these studies that we received. And I was trying to get an answer as to whether this limit, this tolerance was applicable at any speed. For example, if you're on the highway going 65 miles per hour, a 7 mile per hour difference leads you to like 83.2 miles per hour. If it's 5 miles per hour, then you're going 78. 7 miles per hour is 28% difference
Mhm.
At 25 miles per hour, I mean, sorry, it's 10%. At 25 miles per hour, it's a 28% difference in speed. And that just seems really wrong. And I know that granted at 65 miles an hour, you're gonna get more damage, more injuries at that speed than you would at 25, but we're not going 25. And not only that, but, and I haven't lived here as long as most of these folks have, but we've got boxcars, we've got large trucks hauling yachts. They're the only ones that are going 25 miles per hour or less, and it's because they don't want to accept the responsibility for any damage if something does happen. We've got construction vehicles, we've got huge, big wheels, the 18-wheeler trucks heading up and down these roads, and the contractors hauling equipment for lawn mowing or for earth moving, and I would say very few of them are going 25 miles per hour. And we know that the larger the vehicle, the more damage you're going to get if there's an accident. So that plus the stops, the rolling stops, and the absolute disregard for the stop signs at the intersection of West Mystic and Wolf and Rowan are very concerning to me. I walk at least twice a day, having a dog. That's how I get my exercise. Half of West Mystic does not have a sidewalk on the other side, on the east side. So people have to cross the street if they want to stay in a sidewalk, and it's dangerous.
Is there, I'm looking at the map here, actually, to see if there's a. Do you find problem, I mean, I guess it's probably just consistent with the whole road, right?
Yeah, I mean, the speeds definitely picks up as you go south because it's a hill.
Right.
But surprisingly, people accelerate going up too.
I think part of it is because at the very bottom of the hill, there's a very steep incline, and they want to get over that. So they gun it, and then they don't slow down. They just keep going.
The one suggestion I'd make is at minimum at that stop sign, because they've done the gas lines and stuff on the street. The white line just for the stop line isn't really there.
Well, you talked about traffic calming measures, and Colin, you might be able to help me out with this, but a lot of those, sometimes there's dramatic effects by just repainting some of those lines.
Right.
And making sure that, psychologically that does something where it channelizes people's traveling along the roadway. I know we've done that in the past with some success.
Done that in a number of places. Judson Avenue is a big example. So there's speeding's everywhere, but we actually painted the edge lines in so the lanes are narrower, and that people's perception is they have less room, even though the road hasn't changed. They tend to slow down.
And by the way, Colin Kelly is a town engineer, so.
As in Allen Street, where the speed limit goes from 40 to 25, and then there are lines that nobody. And I do understand that it is one of many traffic calming methods you can use, and I'd be happy to see it done on West Mystic, but I'm not convinced it would do what, say, speed bumps or raised crossing beds would do. We also don't have crosswalks painted on the streets at intersections, and as I said, there's a lot of pedestrian and bike traffic on that road.
Sure, yeah.
And somebody's going to get hurt.
That's something we definitely do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the record too, if I may, we did do a traffic study, and I think, Laurel, I think you have been briefed by Officer Lucero. I think he came to with you, but I'll just hit the highlights. I'm not gonna go over the whole thing, but it says evaluators has several areas of note. First, the overall enforcement rating was in the medium range, with a little over half the vehicles traveling faster than 30 miles per hour. To your point about whatever the insurance company told you, statute is statute. There's no, there may be an informal rule. I don't have to, as a police officer, I don't have to say I'm giving you 5 miles. I can actually write you a ticket for doing less than the speed limit.
That's basically what it is.
Yeah, if it's speed too fast for the conditions, it may be a 25-mile-an-hour zone and you're only doing 24, but I can still give you a ticket for that if I can articulate that it fits the statutory requirements, and it applies across the board. But what he's indicating is that it's a medium enforcement. We have some areas that we've come up with where people have had similar conversations where it doesn't even meet that threshold. In other cases where it's far surpassed that, where there's a high enforcement index. He also indicates that there may be a low number of vehicles in the over 50-mile-per-hour range, although this could be a regular motorist. We have found that the high numbers are usually associated with officers responding to a priority incident. Please take this into account. So I think he's indicating that.
I have seen ambulances fairly regularly, but even they aren't going as fast as
Okay.
That is true.
some of the non-commercial, non-government
Sure.
vehicles. Yeah.
The last point he brings up here that I just want to highlight is that the speed studies are shared with our officers so that they have an idea where these speeding hotspots are located and what times are best for enforcement. But that's, I don't know if you all saw that report.
Yeah, I
that's-
shared it.
But you did, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
Oh.
I mean, as I commented, I think that where you would do the study again now, you might see a different picture, because you've got so much more traffic due to the marinas being open and things in general being more open and just, influx of visitors that,
Sure.
just continues to escalate. I mean, I think at the very least, a stop sign at the corner of Thomas and West Mystic Avenue could make some difference. It would break up the bottom part of the street a bit and slow down the acceleration that happens there. I mean, ideally, it would be great to have one also at Irving Street, but I know that's very close to the next stop sign, which, as Anna's pointing out, people don't really always stop at anyway, but at the bottom of West Mystic, at the corner with Route 215. But at the very least at Thomas and West Mystic, with an additional maybe speed indicator sign or something along the lines of that to remind people that it's 25. That would
Did we just recently, did we buy some of those? Did we-
We have one, but we're looking at some old equipment, updating some old equipment that we have. But at the moment, we have one.
How much are those?
They're not cheap.
They're about 13,000.
the permanently posted
Yeah.
ones that go on.
Yeah, the one that flashes, you're going to speed.
Yeah.
They're hooked up to a solar panel. I mean,
Okay.
we've had those, and they're very reasonable requests, and those are things that we want to put up with. They're not cheap.
And usually when we do this, when the officers do the study, we put the secret one up first because we want to get what people are truly doing. And then we'll put up the one that's like, okay, now we want to make sure you're aware of how fast you're actually going.
Mhm.
So that's doable.
Just to address one of, and I feel obligated to do this because we have it often brought up in meetings like this. There's questions or requests for speed humps or speed bumps. In my tenure here with the town, we've not placed any of those. In fact, I think it's been decades since the
Decades.
and it's not really an acceptable. There's a lot of,
People
Well,
speed up between them often. That's what studies have found. Yeah, you slow for it, and you even go faster to get to the next one.
and it creates some issues for public works during the
Plowing
snow
and stuff,
plowing
yeah.
season.
So those that are in place on Pequot Avenue, Mystic, or on Pearl Street. and,
Those are grandfathered.
Okay, so they're exceptions.
Yeah, those are
When
done.
those went in, we had more complaints about them than we did about speeding.
But not
beforehand.
from the residents on that street.
No. When you go over them, especially like with the trailers, the people with the lawnmowers and stuff, it causes a lot of noise. So whoever had speed bump in front of their house almost immediately complained about the noise. The other big one is ambulances and emergency equipment, because it forces them to slow down too, and if the ambulance has somebody in the back, it's very uncomfortable for them. So they don't like, and one point about the stop sign, they're not to be used for speed control. There's plenty of information, you go on the federal government site. There's all kinds of explanations why, but overall, they do not work. As you've already noted, people tend to roll through them. The more signs they are, the more they roll through. And they've actually had studies where put stop signs on a bunch of roads, the overall end time does not change. People might slow down, but they speed up in between, which
Kind of defeats the purpose.
kind of a weird phenomenon, but
So, I mean, I'm not particularly optimistic that painting lines is gonna make any difference for people. What strategies are there that can be?
one that I found, and I know it's not likely to happen, so I'm sure it's not in the budget at all. But instead of having a straight line shot down the hill and uphill, you put in minor doglegs, and maybe you could do that with paint lines. So that instead, you know, you have the road has a slight bend to it as it's going down the hill. You're not actually redoing the road, but using lines. Perhaps you have them doing a little slalom down the road instead. Maybe that's an option, but I'm with you. I don't see that they're going to pay any attention to lines if they're not paying any attention to stop signs.
Our options are somewhat limited. Reducing, if people aren't obeying the speed limit now, reducing it more, I don't know will have any effect. And by statute, we can't authorize speed limits lower than 25 miles an hour. That's the bottom. There are rare exceptions in the state of Connecticut, which requires an analysis by the Department of Transportation. We get their permission to do that. We've done that before where they were not approved. So it's kind of like the 25 is the lower limit. The immediate strategies, like Officer Lucero had said, we can put some, we can try and utilize what signs we do have. We can also add the enforcement component with that. You know, put more. I know you said he was out there for one day, but we can follow up on that. Quite frankly, we're subject to staffing, right? When our officers, the same officer that's going to be doing that is going to be responding to the calls for service or the emergency calls that they're going to. So right now, we don't have the luxury to dedicate someone to that. In the past, we have, but just with staffing shortages at the current time, we're unable to. I can't promise you that I'm going to dedicate someone solely to that. We don't have the people to do it right now. That doesn't mean our officers out on patrol won't do that in their available time. We'll see to that. So that'll be a second. I do think, and Colin, I'll kind of toss this to you again. I understand what you're saying about the lines. But we've witnessed some success with that. It may not sound like, you know, I'm not saying this to placate you or anything. We have seen some success elsewhere with that. In Groton, and you mentioned Judson Ave.
Judson
And Warren
Avenue.
Avenue was the most recent one I'm aware of, putting a center line down.
It may be a somewhat low-cost solution. Obviously, it's subject to when Public Works has they don't paint their own lines. We bring in a company to do that, so it would be subject to that. And there's, like anything, there's cost to it. But you know, I would suggest that maybe you might try to be a little bit more. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But at least it's one. You know, it's not the silver bullet. It's not the lone thing that we want to address, because I don't know what the town manager's thoughts, but it sounds like you do have some concerns here, and they're legitimate. So maybe a combination of things that we can do to help
Can we move
alleviate
that
this.
speed sign for a while there?
We could, and we
Yeah.
can keep, you know, moving it around.
Right.
Just,
I
you
think it's
know,
worth
a
doing,
week
yeah.
here, a week there, and it just keeps coming around.
What about Anne's suggestion of doing some sort of creative kind of line drawing to? Because it is such a straight, long hill, you know, that it's like a raceway.
Yep.
Which makes me wonder, where are all these commercial vehicles going and why are they taking West Mystic Avenue? Because it must be saving them time.
Probably.
So what could we do to make it not the best route to get? to where
Are
we're
they the
going?
problem, or is the speeding the problem, or is it a little
They're
bit of both?
bigger,
Yeah.
so that's my concern. The bigger the vehicle, the more concerned I am.
Sure.
But it is non-commercial vehicles as well. And they're good, you know, you can't stop people from going down the public road, but what makes West Mystic so attractive for people? They're in a hurry to go somewhere and it's a straight shot down the hill. So what can you do to make it less attractive as a shortcut?
Well, and I think that part of what's contributing to that is the use of GPS, because this is ancient history. But when
Waze.
Allen Street went in, I remember there was an agreement made that could not be marked as an exit from Mystic. But now that people use GPS, you know, it's like a great way to get into Mystic and or to get over to West Mystic and or to get into Groton Point or no. So I have to wonder if that's also contributed to more people using that street. And then the locals know it's how you get to 95.
I think you're also the victims of the attractiveness and success of Mystic, which is, it seems to be increasing, not decreasing. So that will obviously is bringing in more people. I don't know if you-
It's almost all our complaints are, yeah, streets of Mystic.
And it's not just West Mystic Avenue, I mean, I think that's been covered, the speed, rise in speeding is a concern in many places, but heading down Route 1 into Mystic towards the bridge, some of these huge vehicles, construction dump trucks, everything, heading down that road at 30 to 40 miles an hour, and they're gonna come around a corner and the bridge is gonna be up. One of these days, somebody's gonna get really hurt. The crosswalk is, you take your life into your own hands when you try to cross with that cross street where to get to the library. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. And
Yeah.
I spoke with a woman I met on Sunday. She lives up on Irving. And her spot of big concern was at the intersection at the bottom of the hill, West Mystic and what is it, 250. She said people roll right through those stop signs all the time. And it's terrible trying to get across the road if you walk around this neighborhood.
Colin, so about the creative line striping, is that a possibility?
Certainly, we could take a look at it. I mean, that's probably a more attractive area to try something like that. I mean, it is such a wide street without room to do something. We could certainly
we look
take a
at
look
that,
at that, yeah.
And I think it's still worth doing a study sometime in the summertime too. To have
We can do it.
reasonable numbers. Yeah.
One question I had, I know that one traffic calming method is to make, if you're not actually making the street more narrow, to make it appear more narrow. as you
That's the
said.
line strike.
Right.
And with the line striping, and I've noticed that residents at the top near the traffic light at Route 1 are parking their cars in the street, but now they're a little leery and they're like parking halfway on that little strip of grass. They put their trash cans in the street. I was thinking, okay, it's only twice a week, but it might slow some people down if you've now got trash cans moving into the street twice a week. So I've started doing it. I haven't lost a trash can yet, but anyway. And I did wonder about that verge, the grassy strip. As I understand it, that's town property
I think that,
Yes. Generally speaking,
to a certain point.
yeah,
so-
we call it the right of way line.
Okay,
It's the right of way, where town line basically. And it's almost always behind the sidewalk, farther on to people's property than they think. But
okay,
that is,
okay. So what about plantings of trees or bushes that make the road seem narrower? Is that an option, or is the town gonna come and remove things that they didn't authorize planting?
all of these options, and if you go online, you can see there are pros and cons to all of these things. And, whether it's drainage in the road or snow plows, limiting visibility like that can cause other issues farther down the line that you're not expecting. Also, trees generally grow and start to interfere with power lines if they're above there. None of them are going to solve it completely. The real trick is trying to find a balance between safety and speeding. And they all have pros and cons. It's quite a difficult situation to.
Okay, I know that there are several dogwoods planted up near the intersection of West Mystic and 1, and that it finally occurred to me that there's a 25-mile-per-hour sign that nobody could see just after crossing Route 1 because it's right smack behind the dogwood tree. The town's already moved it because I put in a request. Not that I have seen any change in speeding on the road, but at least it's there now and you can see it. But I also wondered in terms of size of speed limit signs on Allen Street. There seemed to be a much larger 25-mile-per-hour sign than there is at that intersection. And I didn't know if it was an option to switch that out with something larger, if we can't get the one with that flashes at you, and tells you how.
It's
fast you're
governed by
going.
MUTCD.
Yeah, it's actually signs, their design, the way they look, location, all that is governed by the federal government. The
Font size by the
MUTCD
road.
What's
Is
that?
it font size dependent on what size road and all that stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of factors, and if you really want an interesting read, you can go on the Federal Highway Administration site and actually read through that. It's a rather large document.
It's good. It's like a mystery novel. You'll enjoy it.
So,
If you have trouble sleeping, that's a great solution.
so to start, can we do a new study? Can we look at the lines then? So narrowing, if we could do that, the creative line on the hill crosswalks. How often is that? Do you guys contract out?
Usually it depends on how many streets we're paving. Usually at least once a year, we have somebody come in. Sometimes it's more than that.
And it hasn't happened this year yet?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Probably happen later in the fall after we're done with our paving season.
Then if we could, for a while, get the flashing sign.
Yep.
And then, try to get the officers out there for another, some more days here and there.
Could we also, understanding, but, this isn't to undermine what Colin just mentioned, but maybe we can look at those stop signs that probably unlikely, but maybe just to see if it's even warranted.
Yeah, they're actually, that same document has, they call them warrants or whatever, but there are certain criteria you're supposed to meet for like traffic signals, stop signs, that sort of thing. But we could certainly take a look at that.
I think Ocean View has a couple of stop signs.
Yeah. One of the reasons Public Works got involved with the traffic authority is because years ago, that was a solution that the town typically used. And it really doesn't work. It kind of promotes people to roll through them, and the more signs there are, the less likely people are gonna pay attention to them.
I hear that, but I also do think that even if they're rolling through a stop sign in Thomas, they're slowing down. And it's gonna break up that long stretch that's from Wolf Roland all the way to the end of the road, which is, quite an incline.
We can look at it. I don't mean to offer any promises or assurances that will happen, but just because you brought it up, and I think out of, trying to,
If not, then we've got to have crosswalks, because especially with the sidewalk on like one side of the street.
and that would be part of the marking as well, so. I probably, like I said, it probably isn't a silver bullet, but we'll, at least for the short term, we'll look at that enforcement, the signs, and looks like there's some other measures we might be able to adopt that could help mitigate. You're always gonna, we're not gonna fix every one of those people that go out there, but maybe it'll change the dynamic. So, all right. Any other questions on this?
Yeah.
How long do you think it'll take to figure out the creative line, whether it's okay to do?
Probably a few weeks, at least.
Okay.
Just take a look and try to make sure we cover all the possibilities.
Once you know, can you let Jeannie know that, kind of let
Do
everybody
you
know?
want it on the next meeting agenda? Update next
Yeah.
meeting?
I think she had one.
Okay.
This graph, which shows best times for enforcement, and it goes by the day of the week, and then lane 1 or lane 2, either up or down. And there are quite a few of like a noontime-ish. And I was kind of puzzled by this, and I haven't really had a chance to look at it to understand what's going on, but how they arrived at this. But it seems to me that the bulk of the speeding I've seen is rush hour. I know it's not much of a rush if you lived in Dallas or Boston, but morning before work and evening at the end of work. Right. It seems to be.
Yep.
Things like school buses. I mean, why is a school bus going uphill at more than 25 miles an hour? It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, I want some clarity about best times for enforcement.
That's for our officers. That's
Okay.
what it's. If you're gonna go out there and do traffic enforcement, if you're gonna run radar or stop cars, those are the best times when you're getting the most.
And is that because of the volume of traffic?
for the speed.
So
I-
based on the
I
data,
believe.
that's when the speed was the highest.
Right.
average.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors, and unfortunately, we don't have the officer that did the study here, but that's probably, however the instrument calculates it, it says, hey, if you got to dedicate your resources to the time you maximize their effectiveness, that's the time you put them there.
But we'll redo it in the.
Yeah, and maybe
see
we'll
how
see
that
if-
compares to the original, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
So we will put this on the next agenda though, so we can find, so follow up and you'll
Which
notify
will be
everybody.
August.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
that will be August meeting, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
The next item is 21-490, that's River Road parking and speeding concerns. We have a pretty, is there anyone, I don't know if there's anyone online to discuss this issue?
Well, the one first we have Mr. Bradham. See, he's here for the, do we have a gravel thing? road thing?
Yeah, we do.
Mr. Bradham? If we've got all of them, we want to go ahead and do
Sure.
that. Mr. Bradham?
You need
Is
Can you
it-
hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Thank
We're
you.
we're gonna move the gravel street up.
Okay, I could talk on River Road also.
Well, we can start there if you
There.
want.
I walk on River Road every day. I'm in Mystic, and yeah, there definitely are speeding concerns and traffic concerns on River Road. And I lived on River Road for 20 plus years. So anything to slow traffic down on River
Yeah.
Road obviously is a plus. I don't know anything specific, but I can talk more specifically about Gravel Street and Pearl
Okay,
Street,
let's-
obviously.
Yeah, let's
We'll do
let's
that,
do
yeah.
that one then.
Okay.
That is 21-492. So please, we're happy to hear your concerns and discuss them with you.
Well, I think the concerns that my neighbors have, and you received a couple of written communications from Michael Saracen and Brian and June, I forget their last name, on Gravel Street. But the lack of parking enforcement on Pearl and Gravel Streets has become frankly absurd, gentlemen. My wife just messaged me now because she's putting out the garbage cans on the street so they will be picked up tomorrow morning. And people have twice moved them off the street in front of our house and put them in our driveway, which our driveway is a right of way serving multiple properties. People just will not adhere to any parking signs on Gravel Street and Pearl Street about no parking. And they block our driveways incessantly. And it's all the homes that you will see on Gravel Street and on Pearl Street. You have correspondence from Michael Saracen talking about the entrance to Gravel Street. I know you've had complaints about the entrance to Pearl Street from West Main Street. There are delivery trucks multiple times a day blocking the street and staying for 20 to 30 minutes. I look out on Gravel Street and I can see the delivery trucks parked on Gravel Street from West Main Street all the way down to practically Cliff Street. And they pull over and they're unloading their goods at all hours of the day, including weekends. And I attended the parking study hearing, and I am waiting the town's reaction to the parking study and see what implementations are put in. But at a minimum, I think we need to do something now because, seriously, your Office of Planning and Development and Economic Development and the Chamber of Commerce keep inviting people to historic downtown Mystic, and there is no place to put all the cars. And the town has created this problem in historic downtown Mystic, and it needs to come up with a solution for this summer, not next summer. And you were asked this a year ago, and there are no solutions for downtown Mystic. And there have to be some. We need community service officers. We need lines painted on the roads to tell people where they can park and where they can't. I went through Stonington the other day, and frankly, the other side of the bridge is organized. Cottrell Street is one way. There are lines, there are stripes. There's community service officers walking around. People were parking in an orderly fashion. And that was on Jackson Ave, Willow Street, etc. You come over the bridge and you're on gravel street and there is chaos. And it's like the wild, wild west every day. And I know you drive those streets, Mr. Burt, and you commented on it. So when are we going to do something about it?
First of all, we're not going to do widespread changes until we wrap up that study, because every street is asked for changes. However, we have added in our budget for the first time for this summer, money for CSOs to go around and enforce traffic. The chief had to step away for a second. When he gets back, he can tell us, do you know where they're at on?
We
posting.
still have to post it. We did receive some applications. Now it would be interviewing.
Okay, we're almost at the interview stage for CSOs. So those will be going in. The budget starts July 1st. So hopefully very close to that. They'll be starting. So enforcement should be much better this summer. Now I do have a concern for the entrances on Gravel and Pearl, because I see that all the time. Those trucks are always seem to be there. And now we've got the, is it the Hartman Hum that's there? Where they have.
No,
that
they've been
bump-
there for a long time.
No, I mean, where they've got the.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
concrete barriers,
it is.
the
Yeah,
Jersey
yeah, it
barriers
is.
out
Yeah.
there. And that's probably gonna go for at least through this year.
I do know, there is one resident of Pearl Street that every time there's a construction vehicle, she calls and we send an officer down. I think that's an option. Call and we'll send somebody
Yeah,
as
but
it's
But
happening. I
if
mean,
you
I
have a
know
truck unloading though.
I know.
Which they
I
have
know.
to have spots to unload.
in the Pearl Street, it's the employees, it's the contractors that are parking. So
just
it's
wonder if
easy
we
to
should-
say, move on,
I just wonder if we should do something about the spots right across from where the trucks go.
Posted.
Block it for a while, see how that goes. Just a couple spots.
So that there's no parking on the other side of the
Opposite
road.
side, so because
Okay.
the trucks are gonna have to, they have to have someone to drop off the.
Yeah, I think that's part, and I know that's part of the study that's being done right now, is to
Yeah.
try and find some loading zones or identify. And I did have one of our officers speak with John Burke. Not to be, John, the
You
parking
watched
study
the
that-
study, right? So,
The consultant, yes.
yeah.
The other John, yes.
One of the others,
Right,
yeah.
right.
Multiples. And so the police read, what was it they said?
No, he met as part of the study.
Oh, okay.
I tasked an officer that often works down there to discuss the loading zones and delivery vans, that sort of stuff. And that's, clearly that's a small road with it. We're looking at a photo that I think Michael Saracen
That's
provided.
Sent,
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
I mean,
You know-
Chief Fasaro, quite frankly, your officers drive by illegally parked cars constantly. And they're on patrol. They won't stop and write parking tickets. I think in last year's budget reconciliations, I saw there were $450 issued in traffic violations in Groton. To me, that's inexcusable. I could write $450 in one day in downtown Mystic. I think we need officers walking the beats. I think we need officers on the street. There's no place in Groton that can be busier than historic downtown Mystic in the summer.
Sure.
I don't think there's a police presence at all, and neither do my neighbors.
And there will be, like we discussed soon, but I do agree, unless they're on the way to another issue that we should be
Sure.
ticketing.
no, I appreciate those comments, and I will certainly, following this meeting, discuss it with our supervisors to make sure that they do direct people down there, and that if they do observe these violations, that they take action.
Thank you.
I agree.
And I think some simple signs that say no blocking of driveways, and there's a sign, for instance, outside Grover Insurance that says bridge tender parking only. Now I know that's a Public Works issue, but since Public Works is there, I'll bring it up. And I know there's one on the Stonington side, but no bridge tender, because I know them all, has parked on Gravel Street ever. And that sign is confusing to people. What does that mean? A simple no parking sign would be much more effective. And I don't care if the state mandated it, it's useless.
Well, that was an agreement with the state on each side, that those are parking spots identified for the person that works, or the people that work in the drawbridge.
Yeah, it's occupied by, obviously, town employees. I mean, business employees every day, you know, so no one could ever park there because it's not enforced. That space is never kept empty, including the space. You know, one of the most pressing spots is the space that Michael Saracen sent you the photo of, because people park there, tractor trailer delivery truck parks across the street, and you can't get through gravel street. You know, you could never get an ambulance or a fire truck down gravel street when those two events occur. It really is a fire hazard. As well as the people who keep parking in front of the fire hydrants on Pearl Street. There's a fire hydrant at 10 Pearl Street in front of Adam and Sandy. Yeah, right in front, right across from St. Mark's Church. Okay, there's a fire hydrant and people park in front of it constantly. And I know they're supposed to allow 10 feet now.
I think that was pointed out to us by the pastor there. I think Greg put in a work order maybe for that. He was talking about doing that. We double checked, Steve.
Yeah.
So it's right across from, what is that? Lutheran, St. Mark's, is that what it is?
St. Mark's Episcopal Church, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I just feel for public works, some yellow paint and some discreetly placed no parking signs would do an awful lot on curbs, you know, to indicate no parking. Because seriously, I cannot put my garbage cans in the street for pickup the following morning because people take the garbage cans and move them away from the street. And I can't put them on the sidewalk because I'm blocking pedestrian access. And, you know, God knows we all want pedestrians to use the sidewalk because frankly, you have so many Airbnbs and out of town hotel guests who are staying in the short-term rentals in downtown Mystic, as Mr. Burr and Mr. Reiner know, that they're walking in the middle of gravel street to get to Route 1 and West Mystic Street, West Main Street. So it's an issue, folks. It's an issue that someone is going to get hurt because of the speeding traffic on gravel and on Pearl Streets. It's impossible for vehicles to go through two abreast. Everyone is always pulling over and letting someone else go. And, you know, during the winter season, when we have residents there and everyone knows what the rules are, it's fine. But right now, during the height of tourist season, it's really just a free for all.
This, in a general sense, and hopefully this, to address one of the points you brought up, in a general sense, you're absolutely right. You know, the frequency of calls for service we have in Mystic and the activity down there, that we all understand that. But what I will do, like I said, I'll direct our supervisors to pay more close attention and make sure our officers that are out there are more proactive in both monitoring speed, but also enforcing the parking. They are busier, frankly. You know, things calmed down last year because of the pandemic, but we're seeing, you know, it coming back in spades now with people getting out and the amount of activity in downtown Mystic. But
What if they witness something?
yeah, if they witness something,
Yeah.
to take action on it. I'll
How many CSOs will we have? Just one out there at a time, or
Yeah. possibly two.
maybe two at heavy times? Yeah.
At least in the interim, until we get them in place, we'll have, you know, I'll have our officers be more proactive.
And then Colin, can we put up some sort of no blocking driveway sign? Is that something we're able to do?
I think we did it before. Was there a
Yeah,
house there that had a dirt driveway?
Yeah, we do it individually as people come in, but yeah, 19, I want to say 19 Pearl Street, right after St. Mark's, there's a,
I think there are two of them right on either side
We'll
of
spread out maybe a few more, just, you know, we'll put out some more do not block driveway signs.
Yeah, some on gravel would be well appreciated.
We'll do that.
You know, and some on gravel. While I have Public Works in the meeting also, and this is, you know, I'm being perhaps being silly, but I've lived in other cities. I'm in Washington, DC today. There, you know, I applaud the streets being swept in downtown Mystic, but because there are no parking restrictions and people are parking overnight for the Airbnbs and the short-term rentals, throughout the year, the street sweeper is coming through at 8 o'clock in the morning and cars are parked all along the Pearl Street, Gravel Street, Cliff Street, been lost all over our roads, you know, to River Road, etc. If we're gonna sweep the streets, which I appreciate, and I think they need to be done, and it's wonderful. I saw a street sweeper stuck the other day at the corner of Pearl and Route 1 because traffic was blocked immeasurably because it was 8:20 in the morning. We have to use the money effectively for public works. I really hope that we put up some no parking signs for the night before and we sweep the streets earlier in the morning. The contractors are out picking up garbage starting at 5:30, 6 o'clock. You know, there needs to be street sweeping done sometime other than what the union rules 7 to 3 or something may dictate, because it's totally ineffective right now. You're sweeping streets that are only the passageway, not the gutters, etc., because it's too late in the day, frankly. The town is already alive. Cars are already parked everywhere that needs sweeping. And I realize it's a silly point of view, but that's my point of view.
Point well taken.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion then. Well, we're already gonna do you'll do the enhanced enforcement until we get the CSOs. But in the meantime, we'll get some do not block driveway signs up on Gravel and Pearl and wherever else we think it might be needed. And then paint curb and then double check that the curb by the church is staying painted. Or maybe ask for, someone to run around, just make sure, is there any other really faded paint? I know there used to be yellow, they're just massively faded.
Yeah.
Well, one area of concern I've seen lately is that where Gravel meets West Main Street, and it's Tidal River Clothing, and that's directly across from the loading zone. And cars are live parking and just parking there to go get pickup and takeout, etc. And it's a no parking area. It's a huge curb area. It blocks. There's a stop sign there, obviously coming off Gravel, and people continue to park there, whether it's UPS trucks making a delivery, FedEx, or people just going to pick up something like ice cream and just leaving their car with their flashers on while they're away for 10 minutes. And it creates incredible traffic tie-up. And this was mentioned by John Burke in his traffic study, that kind of gridlock downtown poses immeasurable concerns, as well as people driving around constantly looking for parking. So I think the faster community service officers are downtown and being, supportive and giving people directions as to how to get to the art museum, to park, how to, I don't think they have to be, enforcement agents of the state, just helpful, because frankly, you have a lot of people who have no idea where they want to go.
Yeah,
So
and that's not the sole intent of our community service officers. It's just what you pointed out, to kind of be ambassadors there as well, but if necessary, to be able to take enforcement action in the form of parking tickets. But I know you said you're down in Washington. Maybe upon your return, I can have an officer, maybe you can give some of these ideas to them, one of our traffic officers. That might be helpful as we look at this.
sure,
Would you be willing to do that?
I'll be back early next week.
Okay,
Sure.
I think Jeannie has.
I just don't have his name. I
If
don't
you
have
could,
his information.
yeah, do you have the ability to
Yeah.
email us your contact information?
Sure.
That would be
To whom?
helpful.
To whom should I mail it?
J Vislosky, Vislosky, J Vislosky at groton-ct.gov.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chief.
All right,
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
safe
you.
trip back.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item, kind of going backwards on the agenda, but getting back to River Road. We've had correspondence, and I don't think there's anyone on the call to speak directly to that, but we've had correspondence. I've got a historical file here. Jeannie and I went through it prior to the meeting. Regards to somewhat about speeding, but not really. A lot of this was initiated recently from the Pilar's, they wrote a letter to the town clerk. It was forwarded to myself and the town manager about some concerns. As I'm reading through the file, a lot of these concerns they voiced over the last decade plus, for some time. I have conflicting letters in the file as well, as recently as this week, from others that I went through. But enforcement, the enforcement speed study that was done indicated a low metric here. It's 25 miles an hour. 33 miles an hour and up is in the low range.
What time of year was that done?
This was done
It
just
got
last
pulled
week.
this morning.
Yeah.
Yep,
So-
Thursday to this morning.
And just for the record, I've got a couple of others. I've got one email here from Beth Tillman and Van Brown. And I'll just hit some of the highlights on it. It was emailed to Jeannie, but it says, I often drive this route several times per day and have never witnessed any problems at that spot. It's referring to the parking on River Road near the pond. All the people park safely and are very courteous. I think the pond part.
That's what, just for those who aren't quite clear on what's happening, it's the parking area on River Road. That would be, what direction would that be? The opposite of downtown?
It's closer to Route 27.
Yeah, closer to Route 27.
Yes.
There's that public parking area. There's been some complaints of inappropriate behavior there, I guess you would put it, but no real police records of that.
No, we don't have much to support it. We were told that there was an incident where an individual, a jogger, bicyclist may have been changing their clothes and exposed themselves to the public from the report that we got. We were not notified at the time it happened, so our officers didn't take any action, but we did send an officer over there the other day to follow up. Concerns that are voiced in this letter, as well as another one that concerns about if it were closed, it would create more problems than it might solve. Perhaps the town were to create some parking at the front of the open space parcel that would be helpful. I don't know if that's a viable option or not.
Where's the open space parcel?
I don't know. I don't know what they're referring to.
Is it the
Another
sanctuary?
another letter here from Richard Dixon that, again, I'm summarizing it, but I'm only hitting the highlighted areas. To prevent parking there would create an unintended problem. I use the road almost daily and often multiple times a day and have seldom seen any speeding problems or issues of unsafe parking, except for an occasional complaint that some do not like the cars parked on the turnout next to the pond. I've heard of no problems. I would object to any changes unless the police have actionable complaints documenting significant speeding. Again, the speed study that was done just last week doesn't indicate a problem. However, that doesn't,
Just snapshot in time.
yeah, it doesn't negate people's concerns. You know, certainly there are concerns, and we do try to address them. The efficiency of our custodian is I think he's trying to make sure that we know that he's getting the job done. So we had to shut the door because of the vacuum. We did send an officer out there to address these concerns. The only history that we have, quite frankly, of similar concerns come from the same parties over the last.
But they're the closest ones
Sure,
looking to it.
sure.
Right across the street.
But not all of these are similar. One of them is a truck pulled up with a big ramp and black pickup with wood side panels offloaded, an ATV that took off on River Road. Male pedestrian wearing a yellow and green rain slicker was looking into parked cars. Officers responded to that. Pedestrian who's no other criminal act or anything of the sort. In March, there was a wreath that was on someone's front door. Callers believed that someone was on his property and took it off, but there were 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts that afternoon. And then this one has no comments in it. So I think this is the one we sent an officer out
Yes,
to.
just recently on the
Right.
21st.
Officer did generate a report as a result of that, and that was in speaking with the Polars about their concerns. So that officer has been tasked with looking into these and monitoring the area. It is an area car assigned to a community policing role in that section of town. So that's Officer Calkins. Oh, there it is. Thank you. And she indicated that she met with the parties last week when they observed a male cyclist changing his clothing in the bed of his pickup truck. The unknown male stripped out of the bike clothing, at one point becoming completely naked, according to their report. They also noted that there's an uptick in individuals using these areas a turnoff and may be relieving themselves there. The concern is that River Road is a family-friendly area. Certainly, we want to make sure that there's no issues there, and that we address them if there are. Additionally, patrol checks will be requested of officers. So this did go out to our patrol folks in Mystic to increase patrol checks in that area. But again, based on the information we have here, albeit a snapshot in time, there is a low level of enforcement, but we will, this particular officer and her duties will be taking care of that, and also with the others that are assigned this patrol area.
Do we do any tracking or follow-up? Let's say 3 months down the road, they tell you how it's been going there, just to ensure that it continues on.
Sure. We can do that.
Indefinitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
In fact, I think that
And you'll
check,
see when I run these, I don't know if you've noticed with the ones, like you'll see follow-up as
Yep,
they're called,
yep.
but then you have to open it to
Right.
follow up on what.
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't see, so it seems to be a police issue. I don't see blocking public access to parking.
No,
on
I
the
don't
road.
either.
I think we'd have a lot more complaints
I
on that.
concur.
Okay, so the action will be then stepped up patrol, and then there was some advice given to the property owners
That's
to make sure to contact the police every time you see something.
And
Because you might have to have a patrol in the area.
And we've tasked that particular officer with that assignment, long-term, as opposed to just going out and
Right.
talking to them. She's
Okay.
been given that task. Again, just to reiterate something I said before, we do have dedicated traffic units, when staffing allows. Right now, because of our staffing situation, we don't have dedicated traffic units, but this officer in particular was assigned to that duty, to address this individual issue.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
the next item of business is redevelopment of the lower ball fields and softball fields in El Grasso Technical High School. A request for administrative determination of no significant impact on state highways. There is a traffic light. Again, we reviewed this prior to the meeting. And I don't know if, John, you had any thoughts on it. It seems to me, and here's the plan, by the way. Or Colin, if you had any.
You see any issues with it?
I don't see any now.
Okay, I don't have any issues with it.
I don't either. I think they need a determination, so maybe I would make
And
a
you'll send a
motion.
letter.
I would make a motion. that we-
Yeah, okay, I'll second that.
Okay, and we'll send a letter to them, Jeannie.
I will send a letter, but when we sent the original one, the chief signed it and they said, nope, we want it from the town manager because so I'll draft it and I'll
Okay,
send it to you.
thank you.
Okay.
And the last item, well, I'm sorry, under new business, this is concerned with the town repaving the parking area at the intersection of High Street and London Road.
Now, I know that Greg was looking at that. He had discussions with a nearby person that there was some parking added I know the resident nearby wanted it removed while we were repaving over. It's been there for a while, I believe. The
I
spots.
think since 2015
Okay.
at least.
Now, do you remember what the complaints were about it?
I thought it was to alleviate double parking.
Yeah, and I think,
There's a memo in there,
Yeah.
chief,
Those are
from probably I would say.
This is from 2015, and an ongoing parking. I'll read this just for the sake of the record here. As you're aware, this is from Greg Hanover, at the time was the supervisor of technical services for the town. June 24th, 2015. As you're aware, there's been an ongoing parking issue on London Road near its intersection with High Street. Currently, vehicles are parallel parking 2 cars wide in the gravel area on the north side of the street along the gravel grass area to the south. To alleviate this problem and formalize the parking, engineering has developed the attached plan. Paved parallel parking stalls will be constructed, providing 3 spaces on the north side of the road and 4 spaces on the south side. Please review this plan and approve it if you find it acceptable as anticipated. Public Works will construct these improvements. In looking at this, we were able to, I don't believe any of the people in the room at the time were in their current capacities. And there was a previous agenda item, 1521, Town of Groton paving plan to alleviate double parking issue on London Road. There are notes here that seem consistent with what I just read. They're handwritten, so it's hard for me to read some of them, but
So I wanted to give people legitimate parking spots. Is that the gist of it?
It is, and
And the current complaint is that by making it wider, you've now encouraged faster travel from. Okay.
I think those need to be marked. Is that, am I correct on that?
Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that.
And I think one thing we want to avoid is decreasing the number of parking in Mystic, because we're getting the complaints to the other end. We need more parking in Mystic. But it looks like there was supposed to be a review done by the town manager and acting police chief at the time. We're making an assumption here that it may have happened, which ultimately would have approved this based on the fact that that's what the town engineer was looking for at the time, was approval. But again, there's been a turnover and some of those records don't seem to exist. So again, with this, a bit of conjecture, but I'm of the opinion that there was at least tacit approval, if not formal approval of this at the time. So I don't know if we want to codify that now, or if we want to go based on what we believe to have happened then. But I don't think that should be eliminated, especially since the author of that memo was now the public works director. So and he's not with us. He would have the most insight.
I know, and he said he was not in favor of removing them.
Yeah, and if
I
I
would concur.
recall correctly, people were parking there previous on the gravel, and pavement was a way to formalize that, so it wasn't eroding and causing other issues with the grass. And I think at that point, they did not want to mark it as no parking for the same reason.
So we'll just do no motion. We'll leave it as is unless we want to do a motion to keep the parking. I don't know if we really need that or not.
I'll defer to you, whatever your thoughts
I moved to retain the parking
Okay.
in that area.
are. I concur. Second.
Aye.
The last item on the agenda is ongoing traffic investigations.
But she's not
Yeah, I
here.
just wanted to just give you a heads up, even though we don't have the regular traffic unit, as complaints come in, I am sending them out. So we're working on a couple. One is the Great Brook Road, Mountain Laurel area. We've done 2 studies. Both studies reveal low need for traffic. And the officer even said, there's a lot of cars, but they're not really speeding. So the neighbors are getting together and they're throwing things out. Obviously speed humps, which I said no. Maybe increase speed limit signs as an option. But basically, like what?
Oh,
Like just there's
Increase the number of speed limit signs.
Yes,
Or
there's one-
increase speed limit.
yeah, there's one. Well, they did mention also they want to reduce. It's
What
at
is-
20. It's at 25.
Oh.
And I'm like, I don't know. And I did mention Murphy's Drive where that was a 7 to 9% grade. So she's just looking for ways to control the speeding. Right now, there's a speed limit sign at the beginning of the road and at the end of the road, but nothing in the middle.
For the 23 budget, let's put money in for more of these flashing signs.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Let's-
I
let's
told
do
her
a
that would be
CIP
the
for that,
next
yeah.
step, because we did 2 like secret counts, and then I said and that's how I left it with her. She said, well, if we could get that one up there, so at least now people are aware of how
I
fast.
think we have a couple of signs that, if I'm not mistaken, they were purchased before my tenure, but
Yeah,
I guess there wasn't the right software or something.
yeah,
like that.
Captain
So-
B, I guess at the meeting last week, talked to All Traffic Solutions, and it seems like very low cost to get
Yeah,
our,
let's
what we
get that.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one that's out there. Another one is, I remember at the last meeting, there was a gentleman that lived on Grove Avenue and Pearl Street and Grove Avenue. We did a traffic study. It was done in February. It did show a low need for enforcement. I told him that we would get another one put out there for summer months.
Right.
But he really wants, reduced speed limit. He believes across the board in Mystic, it should be 15 miles an hour, similar to No Ink. So that's kind of where I'm at with him right now.
I didn't know I get like that. Just
And I
grandfathered
confirmed
in.
it. I confirmed it, and a lot of No Ink are 15. And I had
Did
previously
they just
talked
has
to
been
him about.
that way forever and so it was grandfathered?
I think
That's what I think.
No Ink was a more active borough at one point in time. Is that right? I don't know if anybody was know, but
Yeah, I
I mean, they've got
know
their own zoning, all that, but I don't know.
they
if
have
they
their
had-
own zoning. I know years ago, a big issue was tour buses going through there.
That's
and
right,
A lot of
yep.
things changed because of that. They want to eliminate that because the buses were just too big.
That's part of our ordinance, yeah.
But in general, the roads are smaller. The roads,
They
the
are.
road
They're
width
much
is smaller from the, in Noank than they are even in, not that Mystic's got, you know, huge roads, but I think they're more easily navigable than they are up in Noank. I mean, you can't go. I don't even think you can get up to 25 if you wanted to on most of the roads. in Noank.
And I believe that's why I think Pearl Street was one of the first streets where we ever put in the speed hump.
Yeah, yeah.
To joy of half the Noank and the dismay of the other half.
Sure.
And I did tell him at this point, you would probably be reluctant to do anything until the study is finalized. So like that one ongoing. We received a request from, I don't know if you remember, there's the house that's on the corner of Allen Street and Library Street. And they were concerned with speeding, but they're bringing a concern now with people illegally. I think it's Library Street, but if you're at the intersection of coming from
Going the
Mystic,
wrong way.
making
I've heard
that.
that, I saw something posted online
Yes.
recently about that.
So I just sent that to our community policing officer to reach out to them and talk to them about that. There's a complaint on Depot Road, which it just came in, so I haven't done anything with that yet, but I'll ask for a speed study on Depot Road. There was another complaint that just came in. And Colin, I'm not sure if you know if Potter Court is marked no parking, because apparently a gentleman this past weekend went down to Ford's. The parking attendant said there's no parking on Potter Street, so he moved, but I haven't even started looking at that one yet.
I
So that-
believe over the years, that whole area around there was, I do believe Potter Court, at least part of it is marked no parking.
No parking, okay.
Similar reason, it's so narrow
Yeah, you can't-
and
you
there's
can't
so
go
many people go towards.
Okay. So we just, so that's what I've been doing at this, as they come in, I am sending it to the traffic units. We do have a couple in the works. I just don't have any solutions yet.
But we've been most effective when we've been able to, we've had dedicated traffic officers, we leave there for a number of months. But our third time now, our staffing just doesn't allow that right now. When it does, it's easy to pull that person and say, hey, go take care of this. Or we've got issues on this particular road, can you go out and address it? It does net results. Now we're tasking people that have patrols to do that. And they can be effective too, but it's, you know, not optimal. But any other?
I think that's all of them for now.
We have no other agenda items.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. I don't know if there's anybody online still or not.